Elena Ramirez never imagined her ordinary life would end with a wedding ring and a death sentence. When she walked into her Brooklyn apartment expecting dinner, she found something else entirely. Adrian Moretti, the most dangerous man in New York, sitting in her father's chair. Her family owed him $375,000. He wanted payment, but not in cash. He wanted her. 2 years as his wife, or her father dies. Simple choice, impossible answer. If you want to see how a teacher becomes a queen in a world built on blood and betrayal, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets that October afternoon, turning Brooklyn streets into rivers of gray. Elena Ramirez stood under the awning of PS 147, watching her students' parents arrive in minivans and sedans, their windshield wipers beating frantically against the deluge. She pulled her cardigan tighter, smiling as little Marcus Chen waved goodbye from his mother's Honda. "See you Monday, Ms. Ramirez. Finish that book report," she called back, her voice nearly lost in the downpour. 23 years old, 2 years into teaching, and Elena still got that flutter of satisfaction when a struggling reader finally found their rhythm. It was why she'd chosen this path despite her mother's protests that teachers didn't make enough money, that she should have become a nurse or married someone stable. Stable. The word echoed as she stepped into the rain, her umbrella immediately turning inside out. She laughed, wrestling it closed, and made a run for the subway. The F train was packed with damp, irritable commuters, but Elena found a sliver of space and pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from her mother. 1 text from her younger brother, Carlos. "Don't come home yet." Her stomach tightened. Carlos never told her to stay away. She tried calling him back, but it went straight to voicemail. Then her mother, same thing. The knot in her chest pulled tighter. Their apartment in Sunset Park wasn't much. 4th floor walk-up, perpetually peeling paint, radiators that clanked like prisoners rattling chains. But it was home. Her father had worked construction for 28 years to keep them there. Her mother cleaned houses in Park Slope. Carlos was in his 2nd year at community college, studying automotive repair. They were good people, honest people. So why did Carlos sound scared? Elena got off at her stop and walked the 4 blocks to their building, her shoes squelching with each step. The neighborhood was quiet, the rain keeping everyone inside. Mrs. Chen from the corner bodega waved from behind her register, and Elena waved back automatically, her mind elsewhere. The building's front door stuck, as always. She shouldered it open and climbed the stairs, listening to the familiar symphony of her neighbors' lives, TV blaring in 2B, baby crying in 3A, someone cooking sofrito in 3C. Normal. Everything was normal. Until she reached the 4th floor and saw her apartment door slightly ajar. "Mama," she called, pushing it open slowly. The living room looked the same as always. Worn couch facing the small TV, her father's recliner with the duct tape on the armrest, family photos crowding the walls. But the energy was all wrong. The air felt thick, charged with something electric and dangerous. Her mother sat frozen on the couch, hands clasped in her lap like she was praying. Carlos stood behind her, his jaw clenched so tight Elena could see the muscle jumping. And her father, her strong, proud father, who'd built scaffolding 60 feet in the air without flinching, stood in the middle of the room with his head bowed like a man awaiting execution. In his recliner, the duct-tape throne of their small kingdom, sat a stranger. No, not a stranger. Elena knew who Adrian Moretti was. Everyone in Brooklyn knew. You didn't live in this borough without hearing the stories, the whispers, the warnings. He owned half the construction companies, a dozen restaurants, and allegedly ran the most sophisticated crime organization in New York. He was 34 years old and commanded empires. And he was sitting in her father's chair. "Elena," her mother's voice cracked. "Mija, please. Mrs. Ramirez." Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade, smooth, cultured, absolutely devoid of warmth. "Let me speak with your daughter." He stood, and Elena's breath caught despite herself. The rumors hadn't prepared her for the reality of him. Tall, easily 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Renaissance sculptures, all sharp angles and aristocratic bones. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, and when his gray eyes locked onto hers, she felt pinned, dissected, evaluated. "Elena Ramirez," He said her name like he was tasting it. 23 years old, literature degree from CUNY, second-year teacher at PS 147. Excellent evaluations, particularly noted for your work with struggling readers. He tilted his head. Your students love you. The fact that he knew these things, had researched her, made her skin crawl. Who are you? She kept her voice steady, even though her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. A slight smile touched his lips. You know who I am. I know what people say you are. And what do people say? That you're a criminal. Her mother made a small, wounded sound. Carlos moved, but their father raised one hand. Stop. Adrian's smile widened fractionally. Your father owes me money, Elena. Quite a lot of it. The room tilted. What? Papa? She looked at her father, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. What is he talking about? $375,000, Adrian continued, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. Accumulated over 18 months, mostly poker, some sports betting. Your father has expensive taste in long shots. Elena shook her head. That's not possible. My father doesn't gamble. Didn't, her mother whispered. He didn't used to. The floor felt unsteady beneath Elena's feet. Her father, her responsible, hard-working father, was a gambler, had debts of $375,000. There has to be some mistake, she said, hating how young she sounded. We can work something out, a payment plan. He can get a second job. Elena. Adrian moved closer, and she fought the urge to step back. He smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, more dangerous. Your father is 56 years old with a bad back and high blood pressure. How exactly will he earn $375,000? He makes $42,000 a year. The specificity was another violation. He knew everything about them. Then what do you want? Her voice came out harder than she intended. Why are you here if you know he can't pay? Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. I'm here to offer a solution. What kind of solution? He studied her for a long moment, and Elena had the unsettling feeling of being appraised like merchandise. You, he said finally. I want you. The words hung in the air, obscene and impossible. Absolutely not. Carlos surged forward, but two men Elena hadn't noticed before materialized from the hallway, large, expressionless, armed. Carlos froze. Sit down, Adrian said quietly, and Carlos sat, just like that. No argument. Elena's mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. Want me for what? Marriage. She laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound burst out of her, sharp and slightly hysterical. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about contracts, Elena. 2 years as my wife, and your father's debt is erased. Your family remains safe, financially secure, and completely untouched by my business affairs. He paused. Refuse, and your father has 1 week to produce $375,000. When he fails, and he will fail, the consequences will be severe. You're threatening him. I'm stating facts. This is insane. Elena looked at her parents, desperate for them to tell her this was a nightmare, a mistake, anything but real. You can't seriously I expect you to understand the situation. Adrian's voice remained calm, but something shifted in his posture, a predator's focus. Your father made choices. Those choices have consequences. I'm offering you a way to protect him from those consequences. It's actually quite generous. Generous? Elena's fear was crystallizing into fury. You're trying to buy me. No. He stepped closer again, and this time she did retreat, her back hitting the wall. I'm trying to save your father's life. Make no mistake, Elena. If you walk away from this, he dies. Maybe not today. Maybe not next week. But soon. And it won't be pleasant. His debts will transfer to your mother, then to Carlos. Your family will be destroyed, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but grief and regret. Her mother was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Her father still couldn't look at her. Carlos was shaking with impotent rage. Why? Elena whispered. Why me? You could marry anyone. I need a wife for specific reasons. Someone educated, respectable, with no connections to my world. Someone who can navigate both the legitimate and illegitimate aspects of my life. Someone... He paused, and for the first time, something almost human flickered across his face. Someone I can trust not to have ulterior motives beyond protecting her family. You don't know anything about me. I know you spent your college fund on your brother's tuition when your father got laid off. I know you worked 2 tutoring jobs on weekends to help with rent. I know you turned down a teaching position in Westchester because it would have meant moving away from your family. His eyes held hers. I know you're loyal, Elena. Loyal enough to sacrifice yourself. The observation was surgical, cutting straight to the truth she didn't want to acknowledge. He was right. She would sacrifice herself for them. She always had. How long? Her voice was barely audible. 2 years. A legal marriage, properly documented. You'll live in my home, attend events with me, fulfill the role of my wife in all public capacities. And privately? Something dangerous glinted in his eyes. That will be negotiated. Her mother sobbed openly now. Mija, no, we'll find another way. There is no other way, Mama. Elena was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Inside, she was screaming. Outside, she was already becoming someone else. Someone harder, colder. Someone who could survive this. Is there? Adrian shook his head slowly. No, there isn't. Elena looked at her father, really looked at him. He'd aged a decade in the past few months, she realized. The gambling, the stress, the fear. It had carved lines into his face, bent his shoulders. This was killing him already. She could let it finish the job, or she could stop it. If I agree, she forced herself to meet Adrian's gaze. If I do this, my family is completely protected. No debts, no threats, no retaliation, ever. You have my word. The word of a criminal. His smile was sharp enough to cut. The word of a man who keeps his promises. Ask anyone in this city, Elena. When Adrian Moretti gives his word, it's iron. She wanted to hate him. She did hate him. But she also saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't lying. Whatever else he was, he meant what he said. I need time to think. No. The single word was absolute. This offer expires when I walk out that door. Decide now. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, but I'm offering you a choice, more than many people in your father's position receive. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He was forcing her to decide her entire future in minutes, with her family's lives hanging in the balance. It was manipulation, coercion, a dozen forms of wrong. But he was right about one thing. It was more than most would get. Elena closed her eyes. Behind her lids, she saw her life spooling out in 2 directions. In one, she refused. She kept her freedom, her career, her self-respect. And watched her father die, probably her mother too from the stress, Carlos forced to drop out of school, the family destroyed. In the other, she said yes. 2 years, 730 days. She could survive that. People survived worse. What do I have to do? She asked, eyes still closed. Say yes. I need details, a contract, something in writing that proves you'll keep your word. When she opened her eyes, Adrian was holding out a folder. Of course, he'd brought a contract. He'd known she would agree. The arrogance of it made her want to throw it in his face. Instead, she took it. Read it carefully, he said. My attorney will answer any questions. The document was intimidatingly thick. Elena flipped through pages of legal language, clauses, and subclauses until she found the core terms. Duration, 24 months from date of legal marriage. Compensation, full forgiveness of Rafael Ramirez's debt, $375,000, plus a trust fund of $100,000 for Elena Ramirez upon completion of term responsibilities. Public appearances as required. Residency and primary home, maintenance of marriage appearance. Termination clauses, death, mutual agreement, or breach of contract. There were pages more, confidentiality agreements, behavioral expectations, financial arrangements. It read like a business merger, which she supposed it was. What happens if I break the contract, she asked. Depends on the breach. Minor infractions can be corrected. Major ones, infidelity, disclosure of confidential information, abandonment, would void the agreement and reinstate your father's debt with penalties. So I'm trapped. You're committed. There's a difference. Elena looked at her mother, who was shaking her head frantically. At Carlos, who looked ready to fight all of Adrian's men with his bare hands. At her father, who finally met her eyes. I'm sorry, he mouthed. I'm so sorry. She loved him. That was the terrible thing. Despite this catastrophic failure, this selfish, devastating mistake, she still loved him. She loved all of them. And love, she was learning, was both a blessing and a curse. "I need a pen," she said. "Elena, no." Her mother reached for her, but Elena stepped away. "It's okay, Mama. It's going to be okay." "How can you say that? He's a monster. He's a businessman." Elena looked at Adrian. "Isn't that right? This is just business." "Just business," he agreed, something unreadable in his expression. She signed the contract. Her hand shook slightly, but the signature was legible. Elena Sofia Ramirez. Her name, still her own, for a little while longer. Adrian took the folder, glanced at the signature, and nodded to one of his men who produced another document, a receipt showing her father's debt as paid in full. "Congratulations, Raphael," Adrian said. "You're a free man." Her father made a sound like a wounded animal. "We'll marry in 3 weeks," Adrian continued, his attention back on Elena. "That gives you time to resign from your position, settle your affairs, and prepare. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with the details." 3 weeks? Elena's composure cracked slightly. "That's not enough time. It's more than enough. Unless you'd prefer to marry tomorrow." "No." The word came out too fast, and his smile suggested he'd noticed. 3 weeks, then. I'll send a car for you Sunday at noon. We have details to discuss, and you'll need to be fitted for a dress." He moved toward the door, his men falling into formation around him. "Oh, and Elena?" She looked at him, this man who now owned the next 2 years of her life. "Welcome to the family." Then he was gone, taking his men and his presence, and leaving behind only the echo of destruction. For a long moment, no one moved. Then her mother collapsed, sobbing. Carlos caught her, his own face twisted with fury and grief. Her father stood in the middle of the room like a statue, silent tears streaming down his weathered face. Elena felt nothing. The numbness was complete, a blessed anesthesia against the enormity of what she'd just done. She'd sold herself to save them, like some Victorian novel, some fairy tale with the ending ripped off. Except this wasn't fiction. This was her life now. "Mija," her father's voice broke. "Don't." Elena held up her hand. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. I just can't right now." She walked to her bedroom, the tiny room she'd had since childhood, with its single bed and second-hand desk and walls covered with teaching credentials and photos of students. She closed the door, locked it, and finally let herself feel. The sob that tore from her chest was primal, animal. She clamped her hand over her mouth to muffle it, sliding down the door until she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. 2 years. 730 days. 17,520 hours. She could survive that. She had to. Outside her door, she heard her mother's muffled crying, Carlos's angry muttering, her father's silence that spoke of shame deeper than words could reach. Her family, broken by greed and bad choices, and the cruel arithmetic of debt. And her, the payment. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of surreal activity. Adrian's assistant, a crisp, efficient woman named Victoria, called the next morning with a schedule that would have made a military general weep. Dress fittings, venue selections, guest list approvals, legal documentation. Elena moved through it all like a ghost, saying yes to everything because it didn't matter. None of it mattered. She submitted her resignation to PS 147. Principal Matthews tried to talk her out of it, clearly sensing something was wrong, but Elena gave her the prepared story. Sudden family situation, moving out of state, unavoidable. The lies tasted like ash. Her students cried when she told them. Little Marcus Chen asked if he could write to her, and Elena had to excuse herself to the bathroom to hide her tears. What was she supposed to say? "Sorry, Marcus, but I'm being forced to marry a crime lord to pay off my father's gambling debts, so I won't have a forwarding address." The dress fitting was surreal. The boutique was in Manhattan, the kind of place where you needed an appointment just to browse. Victoria guided her past racks of designer gowns to a private room where 3 dresses waited, each more beautiful and expensive than the last. "Mr. Moretti selected these based on your measurements and coloring," the seamstress explained, a tiny French woman with pins in her mouth. "But of course, the choice is yours." Elena stared at the dresses. They were gorgeous, ivory silk and lace, beading and embroidery, the kind of gowns little girls dreamed about. She'd dreamed about a wedding dress once back when she thought she'd marry for love. Someone kind. Someone who chose her, not bought her. This one, she said, pointing randomly at the middle dress. It didn't matter which one. She'd be beautiful and miserable in any of them. The seamstress nodded approvingly and helped her into it. The silk was cool against her skin, the fit nearly perfect already. Elena stood on the pedestal and stared at her reflection. A stranger in a wedding gown, eyes hollow, smile absent. "You look beautiful," Victoria said softly, and for the first time Elena detected something like sympathy in her voice. "I look like a bride." "Isn't that the point?" Elena met her eyes in the mirror. "Is it?" Victoria didn't answer, but her expression shifted. Just for a moment, Elena saw understanding there. This woman knew. She knew exactly what kind of marriage this was. The alterations were minor. The dress would be ready in 10 days, delivered directly to the venue. Elena changed back into her jeans and sweater, feeling the weight of the silk leave her like a shed skin. "Mr. Moretti asked me to give you this." Victoria handed her a black credit card. "For any personal expenses you need before the wedding." Elena stared at the card, heavy plastic embossed with Adrian's name. Blood money, payment for services rendered. "I don't want his money." "It's not a gift, Elena. It's part of the contract. You're entitled to reasonable expenses. Consider it an advance on your future." Future. What a strange word for something that felt like a prison sentence. She took the card. The wedding was set for a Saturday in November. The venue was the Vanderbilt Estate, a historic mansion overlooking the Hudson River. Elena had driven past it once, marveling at the kind of people who could afford to rent such a place. Now she was one of them, or pretending to be. Her family would attend, of course. Carlos had threatened not to come, but their mother had guilted him into it. "She's doing this for us," Elena had heard her say. "The least we can do is support her." Support, as if this were a choice worth celebrating. The night before the wedding, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling and counting the hours until her life irrevocably changed. 18 hours. 17. 16. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Having second thoughts? She stared at it. Adrian. Had to be. "Too late for that," she typed back. "It's never too late. Say the word, and I'll call it off." Her finger hovered over the screen. Was he serious? Or was this some kind of test? And my father's debt? Reinstated? Of course. She set the phone down without responding. There was no point. He wasn't offering her freedom, just another form of prison. Another text came through. "For what it's worth, I'll try to make this as painless as possible." The kindness, or approximation of it, was somehow worse than cruelty would have been. She turned off her phone and pulled the blanket over her head, willing sleep to come and spare her these final hours of her old life. It didn't work. Saturday dawned cold and clear, the sky that brilliant November blue that made everything look sharp-edged and surreal. Elena woke at dawn, her stomach churning with nerves and dread. Today. It was today. Her mother came in with coffee and tears, fussing over her like she was a real bride with real joy. Carlos avoided her eyes. Her father hadn't spoken to her in 3 days, the guilt apparently rendering him mute. The car, a sleek black Mercedes, arrived at 10. Elena wore a simple dress for the journey. The wedding gown would be waiting at the venue. She hugged her mother, nodded at Carlos, and ignored her father completely. Let him live with that. The drive to the Vanderbilt estate took 90 minutes. Elena stared out the window, watching the city give way to suburbs, then to the rolling hills of the Hudson Valley. Beautiful country. She'd always meant to explore it. Now she'd be married in it. The estate was even more impressive up close, a sprawling mansion with manicured grounds and views that belonged in paintings. A coordinator met her at the entrance, all smiles and efficiency, and swept her into a bridal suite that could have housed a family of 4. The dress hung waiting, a sculpture of ivory and lace. A team of stylists materialized to transform her, hair swept into an elegant updo, makeup that made her look older, sophisticated, like someone who belonged in this world. When they were finished, Elena stared at her reflection and didn't recognize herself. She looked like a bride, a beautiful, elegant bride. She felt like a sacrifice. "It's time," Victoria said from the doorway, and Elena's heart kicked into overdrive. The ceremony was small, only 50 guests, mostly Adrian's associates and a handful of her family. The officiant was a judge who owed Adrian some unnamed favor. The whole thing was transaction masquerading as tradition. Elena walked down the aisle alone. Her father had forfeited the right to give her away, and she wouldn't have let him anyway. She kept her eyes on the altar, where Adrian waited in a black tuxedo that made him look like a movie star. Handsome, powerful, completely untouchable. His eyes tracked her approach with an intensity that made her skin prickle. When she reached him, he took her hand, his grip warm, steady, utterly foreign. "You look beautiful," he murmured, and she hated that part of her responded to the compliment. The ceremony was brief. The judge spoke of commitment and partnership in a voice that suggested he did this often, for couples who meant none of it. They exchanged vows Elena had written herself, simple, empty promises. They exchanged rings, a platinum band that felt like a shackle. "You may kiss the bride." Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, tilting it toward him. His eyes asked a question, and Elena gave the smallest nod. Permission, barely. His kiss was soft, almost gentle, a brush of lips that lasted 3 seconds and felt like 3 hours. When he pulled back, she saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the judge announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Adrian Moretti." The applause was polite, restrained. Elena turned to face the guests, her family in the front row, her mother crying, Carlos stone-faced, her father absent. He hadn't come. Even for this, he hadn't come. The betrayal was a knife between her ribs. The reception was elegant torture. Elena smiled and accepted congratulations from people she'd never met, who assessed her like merchandise while praising her beauty, her grace, her good fortune to have caught Adrian Moretti. "Such a lucky girl," one woman said, diamonds dripping from her neck. "Very lucky," Elena agreed, and wondered if anyone heard the irony. Adrian stayed close, his hand at her back or holding hers, playing the role of attentive groom. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple in love. Only Elena felt the performance in every touch, every smile. During dinner, he leaned close enough that his breath stirred her hair. "You're doing well." "I'm surviving. That's the spirit." There was dark humor in his voice. "We should dance. It's expected." The first dance, of course. Another performance. The band struck up something slow and romantic, and Adrian led her onto the floor. His hand settled at her waist, hers on his shoulder, and they began to move. He was an excellent dancer, leading with confidence that made it easy to follow. Elena focused on the steps, trying not to think about how close they were, how many people were watching. "Look at me," he said quietly. She raised her eyes to his. Big mistake. Up close, his face was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, those gray eyes that seemed to see everything. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a blade or a storm. "This doesn't have to be a war, Elena." "What else would it be?" "A partnership. We can make this work if you're willing to try." "I signed your contract. What more do you want?" His jaw tightened. "Cooperation would be nice, maybe even civility." "You bought me. You don't get to demand I like it. I saved your father's life. You threatened it in the first place." They were still dancing, still smiling for the cameras, but the tension between them had gone sharp and ugly. "Your father created his own problems," Adrian said, his voice low and hard. "I offered a solution. You chose to accept it. That makes us partners in this arrangement, whether you like it or not." "Partners?" Elena laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call coercion now?" "I call it reality. And reality is that you're my wife for the next 2 years. You can spend that time fighting me, making us both miserable, or you can accept the situation and make the best of it. Your choice." The song ended. Elena stepped back, putting distance between them even as applause rippled through the room. "I need air," she said, and walked away before he could stop her. She found a terrace overlooking the Hudson, the November wind cutting through her dress like knives. She didn't care. She needed the cold, needed something real and sharp to cut through the unreality of everything else. "You'll freeze out here." She turned. Adrian stood in the doorway, holding her wrap, the ivory cashmere that matched the dress. "Go away." "No." He crossed to her, settling the wrap around her shoulders. His hands lingered for a moment, and Elena fought the urge to shrug him off. "You're my wife now, Elena. That means I'm responsible for you, including making sure you don't get pneumonia on our wedding day." "How romantic." "I'm not romantic. I'm practical." He leaned against the railing beside her, his profile sharp against the darkening sky. I know this isn't what you wanted, but it's what we have. We can make it bearable, or we can make it hell. I'd prefer bearable. Elena stared out at the river, watching the light fade from silver to slate. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. I had a life. Plans. I was going to teach, maybe get my master's eventually. Date like a normal person. Fall in love. Get married because I wanted to, not because... Her voice broke, and she swallowed hard. You took that from me. Your father took it from you, Adrian said quietly. I just provided the terms. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you see clearly. I'm not the villain here, Elena. I'm just the consequence. She turned to look at him, really look at him. In the fading light, he seemed less monster, more man, tired around the eyes, jaw tight with some emotion she couldn't name. What do you get out of this? She asked. Really, why do you need a wife? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the river. Legitimacy, connections, a certain respectability that comes with marriage to someone outside my world. He glanced at her. And yes, someone I could trust not to have ulterior motives. In my position, that's rarer than you'd think. So I'm a prop. You're a partner. There's a difference. You keep saying that because it's true. He turned to face her fully. I need you to understand something, Elena. This marriage may have started as a transaction, but for the next 2 years, it's real. I will treat you as my wife, with respect, with protection, with whatever you need to be comfortable. In return, I expect you to fulfill your role. Can you do that? She wanted to say no, wanted to throw his words back in his face and tell him exactly what he could do with his contract and his respect and his partnership. But she'd already signed her name, already taken the vows, already stepped into this cage. I can try, she said finally. Something like relief crossed his face. That's all I ask. He offered his arm. After a moment, Elena took it, letting him lead her back inside to the reception, to their guests, to the rest of this elaborate performance. As they re-entered the ballroom, Victoria caught her eye and nodded subtly. Approval, maybe, or just acknowledgement that Elena was learning the rules of this new world. The party continued late into the night. Elena danced with strangers, accepted congratulations, played her role until her face hurt from smiling. Adrian stayed close, attentive, the perfect groom. To everyone watching, they were a fairy tale. Only Elena knew it was really a devil's bargain. Finally, mercifully, it was time to leave. A car waited to take them to the airport. They were flying to Adrian's cabin in the Catskills for a week-long honeymoon. The word tasted like poison. Elena changed out of her wedding gown, carefully hanging it in the garment bag. She'd wear it once and never again, this dress that cost more than most people made in a year. What a waste. In the car, Adrian loosened his tie and closed his eyes, looking suddenly exhausted. Elena studied him in the dim light, this stranger she'd married, this man who now controlled her life. He was human after all, capable of fatigue. Somehow, that made it worse. What happens now? She asked quietly. He opened his eyes. We go to the cabin. We spend a week establishing the marriage in case anyone checks. We figure out how to live together. He paused. And we start keeping our promises. What promises? You promised to try. I promised to make this bearable. His eyes held hers. Let's see if we can both keep our word. The plane was small, private. Of course he had a private plane. Elena settled into a leather seat and watched the ground fall away beneath them, taking with it the last remnants of her old life. She was Elena Moretti now, wife of a criminal, prisoner in a gilded cage. The girl who'd taught second grade and dreamed of ordinary love was gone. And in her place was someone new, someone harder, stronger, forged in the fire of impossible choices, someone who would survive this. She had to. The cabin turned out to be a massive lodge tucked into 300 acres of mountain forest, all stone and timber and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Catskills like paintings. Elena stood in the great room while Adrian dealt with their luggage, taking in the vaulted ceilings, the enormous fireplace, the leather furniture that looked both expensive and comfortable. A cage, she reminded herself. No matter how beautiful, it was still a cage. Your room is upstairs, second door on the left, Adrian said, appearing behind her. Mine is at the end of the hall. She turned, surprised. Separate rooms? Did you think I'd force you to share my bed? His voice was cold, almost insulted. The contract specifies public appearances as husband and wife. What happens privately is negotiable, and you've made your feelings abundantly clear. Heat crept up her neck, embarrassment mixed with something else she didn't want to examine. I didn't mean, yes, you did, and that's fine. I'm not interested in an unwilling partner. He moved past her toward the kitchen. There's food in the refrigerator, wine if you want it. I have work to do, so I'll be in the study. If you need anything, there's a house phone with an intercom. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone in the massive space, feeling oddly dismissed. She'd been braced for, what? Demands? Expectations? Some assertion of husbandly rights? Instead, she got separate bedrooms and professional distance. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt strangely unsettled. Her room was beautiful. King bed with white linen, sitting area by a window overlooking the forest, bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people. Her suitcase sat on a bench at the foot of the bed, and when she opened it, she found all her clothes neatly packed along with several items she hadn't packed herself. Designer loungewear, silk pajamas, expensive toiletries. Victoria's doing, probably. Making sure the new Mrs. Moretti looked the part even in private. Elena changed into her own sweats and t-shirt, a small rebellion, and explored the rest of the house. 5 bedrooms, all beautifully appointed. A media room with a screen the size of a wall. A gym that rivaled commercial facilities. A wine cellar that probably cost more than her parents' apartment. And everywhere, signs of wealth so casual it seemed obscene. Original artwork on the walls. Designer furniture. Technology so new it probably wasn't even available to regular consumers yet. This was Adrian's world. Excess and elegance, power measured in things most people couldn't even imagine owning. She found him in the study, as promised, sitting behind a massive desk with 3 computer monitors displaying what looked like financial reports and security feeds. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater, looking more approachable but somehow more dangerous without the formal clothes. I'm making dinner, she announced from the doorway. Do you have dietary restrictions I should know about? He looked up, clearly surprised. You cook? I'm a teacher. We survive on terrible salaries. Of course I cook. She crossed her arms. Unless you were planning to have someone do that for us? There's a catering service that can deliver. I don't want catering. I want to cook. Do you have a problem with that? A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it from handsome to devastating. No problem at all. I like a woman who knows her way around a kitchen. I'm sure you like a lot of things about women, Elena said dryly. Are you going to answer my question? No restrictions. I eat everything. He paused. Do you need help? I need you to stay out of my way. The smile widened. Yes, ma'am. Elena retreated to the kitchen before she could analyze why that smile had sent heat curling through her stomach. This was not attraction. This was stress and confusion and the absolute insanity of her situation. The kitchen was a chef's dream. Sub-zero refrigerator, wolf range, marble countertops, every tool imaginable. The fridge and pantry were well stocked with high-end ingredients. Elena found chicken breast, fresh vegetables, arborio rice. She could make risotto, something that required attention and would keep her hands busy. She was halfway through the prep when Adrian appeared in the doorway, 2 wine glasses in hand. Peace offering, he said, holding one out. A very good Pinot Grigio that pairs well with what I assume is going to be risotto. Elena wiped her hands and accepted the glass. The wine was excellent, crisp and clean with a hint of citrus. Of course it was excellent. Everything in his world was excellent. You know about wine pairing, she observed. I know about a lot of things. He leaned against the counter, watching her work. My mother insisted I learn to cook and appreciate good food. She said a man who only knows how to consume but not create is a parasite. Your mother sounds wise. She was. Something shadowed his face. She died when I was 19. Elena paused in her chopping. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. He took a drink of wine. She would have liked you, I think. She valued education, intelligence. She was a teacher too, actually. History. The revelation was unexpected, humanizing. Elena focused on mincing garlic, unsure how to respond. What about your father? Died when I was 12. Heart attack. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, but there was an edge to it. After that, it was just my mother and me. And then just me. No siblings? No, just me and this. He gestured vaguely. This empire of questionable legitimacy. Elena glanced at him, surprised by the self-awareness. You could have chosen differently. After your mother died, you could have... Could have what? Walked away from the family business? Pretended I didn't inherit both the wealth and the responsibilities? He laughed, sharp and bitter. It doesn't work that way, Elena. When you're born into certain families, your path is chosen before you can even walk. That's not true. People make choices. Do they? Did you choose to marry me, or was your choice already made by your father's debts? He met her eyes. We're not so different, you and I, both trapped by family obligations we never asked for. The comparison stung because it held truth. Elena turned back to the stove, adding stock to the rice with more force than necessary. There's a difference between being born into wealth and crime versus being sold to pay a debt. Is there? Or is it just a matter of scale? He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. You resent me for offering you a way out. I resent my father for dying and leaving me with no choice but to take his place. We're both prisoners, just in different cells. Stop trying to make us the same. Why? Because it's easier to hate me if I'm a monster? Elena spun to face him, anger flaring hot and bright. You are a monster. You threatened my family. You forced me into this marriage. I saved your family from the consequences of your father's choices. His voice was cold now, the brief vulnerability gone. And I didn't force you to do anything. I gave you a choice. The fact that you didn't like either option doesn't make it coercion. The choice between marrying you or watching my father die isn't a real choice. It's more choice than most people in your situation get. You want me to be the villain? Fine, I'll be the villain. But don't pretend you're some helpless victim. You made a decision. Own it. They stared at each other, the kitchen crackling with tension. Elena's heart was pounding, adrenaline singing through her veins. She wanted to throw something, to scream, to... The risotto began to burn. Damn it! She turned back to the stove, stirring frantically. The bottom layer had scorched, but most of it was salvageable. She added more stock, adjusted the heat, tried to calm her racing pulse. Adrian watched her for a moment longer, then set down his wine glass. I'll set the table. He left before she could respond, and Elena focused on saving dinner, willing her hands to stop shaking. He was right, and she hated him for it. She had made a choice. A terrible, impossible choice, but a choice nonetheless, and she was going to have to live with it for the next 2 years. Dinner was tense and silent. The risotto was good despite the near disaster, the chicken perfectly seasoned. They ate at opposite ends of a table that could seat 12, the distance between them feeling both necessary and absurd. This is excellent, Adrian said finally. Thank you. You're welcome. Elena kept her eyes on her plate. We can't do this for 2 years. She looked up. Do what? This. The silent treatment, the anger, the constant fighting. He set down his fork. I meant what I said earlier. This doesn't have to be a war. Then what should it be? An arrangement. We're stuck with each other, so we might as well make it bearable. He paused. I'm willing to make concessions, if you are. What kind of concessions? You want to work? You can work. Not teaching, that would raise too many questions, but something else. Charity work? Consulting? Whatever interests you. You want your own space, your own life outside this marriage? You can have it, within reason. He leaned back. I'm not interested in controlling every aspect of your existence, Elena. I just need you to play your part when it matters. It was more than she'd expected, more freedom than the contract implied. Why? Because I've had enough war in my life. I'd like my home to be peaceful. His eyes met hers. And because making you miserable doesn't benefit either of us. Elena considered this. It was logical, practical, and it gave her something she desperately needed, a sense of autonomy, however limited. What do you get out of it? She asked. A wife who doesn't hate me quite so much. A home that isn't a battleground. He smiled slightly. And maybe, eventually, someone I can actually talk to. You have plenty of people to talk to. I have employees and associates and people who want things from me. I don't have friends, Elena. Not real ones. It's the cost of this life. The loneliness in his voice was unexpected and disarming. For a moment she saw past the powerful crime lord to the man underneath. isolated by his position, surrounded by people, but fundamentally alone. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "That's all I ask." They finished dinner in a more comfortable silence. Adrian helped her clean up despite her protests, moving through the kitchen with surprising competence. His mother had taught him well. "I'm going to bed," Elena announced when the dishes were done. "It's been a very long day." "Of course." He dried his hands, watching her. "Elena? Thank you. For trying. I know this isn't easy." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and fled upstairs to her beautiful prison of a bedroom. The next morning, Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to curtain and the smell of coffee. She found Adrian in the kitchen, showered and dressed in casual clothes, reading something on a tablet while an elaborate breakfast spread covered the counter. "I wasn't sure what you liked," he said, glancing up, "so I made options." There were pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, yogurt, granola. Enough food for 6 people. "You made all this?" "I told you my mother taught me to cook." He poured her coffee without asking how she took it. Apparently he'd noticed last night. "I don't get to do it often. Humor me." Elena accepted the coffee and tried the pancakes. They were perfect. Light, fluffy, with a hint of vanilla. "These are really good. Thank you." He seemed genuinely pleased. "I thought we could go for a hike later if you're interested. There are trails through the property, and the views are spectacular this time of year." It wasn't what she'd expected. This domestic scene, this casual invitation. She'd braced herself for demands or distance, not breakfast and hiking. "Okay," she heard herself say. "That sounds nice." His smile was quick and real, transforming his face again. Elena looked away, focusing on her coffee. She couldn't afford to find him attractive, couldn't afford to soften toward him, but it was getting harder to maintain her anger when he was being pleasant. They hiked for 2 hours through forests ablaze with fall color, following trails that wound up the mountain to viewpoints where you could see for miles. Adrian pointed out landmarks, told her about the history of the area, his knowledge surprising her. "You really love it here," she observed as they rested on a rock outcropping, the valley spread below them. "It's one of the few places I can relax. No business, no pressure, just peace." He glanced at her. "You can come here whenever you want, after this week. The property is yours as much as mine now. I don't think your security team would appreciate me showing up unannounced. They work for me. They'll do what I tell them." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "There. I've added you to the authorization list. The house is yours whenever you need it." The gesture was unexpected and oddly touching. "Thank you." "You're my wife, Elena. What's mine is yours. That was part of the deal." "The deal," she repeated. "Right." He studied her for a moment. "You keep trying to reduce this to a transaction. Maybe that makes it easier for you, but we're going to be living together for 2 years. We might as well try to be friendly." "Friendly?" The word felt strange. "Is that what we are?" "We could be. If you'd let yourself stop seeing me as the enemy. You threatened my family. Your father threatened your family by gambling away money he didn't have. I just presented the bill." He stood, offering his hand to help her up. "I'm not saying I'm blameless, but I'm not the villain you want me to be either." Elena took his hand, warm, strong, calloused in unexpected places. He pulled her to her feet easily, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "Who are you then?" she asked quietly. "Someone trying to survive his circumstances. Same as you." He released her hand. "Come on. We should head back before it gets dark." The rest of the week followed a similar pattern. Mornings of surprising domesticity. Adrian cooking elaborate breakfasts, Elena reading or exploring the property. Afternoons of careful coexistence, hiking, watching movies in the media room, occupying opposite ends of the house with books and work. Evenings of slowly thawing conversation over dinners they took turns preparing. It was strange and disorienting, this enforced intimacy with a man she barely knew. But Elena found herself adapting, learning his patterns and preferences. He was an early riser, liked his coffee black, read voraciously, history and philosophy mostly. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He was surprisingly tidy for someone who probably had staff to clean up after him. And he was lonely. She saw it in the way he lingered over dinner conversations, asking about her family and childhood. in the way he seemed genuinely interested when she talked about teaching, in the careful way he maintained distance, as if afraid too much proximity would send her running. On the fourth night, Elena found him on the back deck, staring at the stars with a glass of whiskey. "Can't sleep?" she asked, wrapping her sweater tighter against the cold. "Never could." He glanced at her. "You should be wearing a coat." "I'm fine." She leaned against the railing. "What are you thinking about?" "How strange this is." He turned to face her. "A week ago, you were a stranger. Now you're my wife. My mother would have found that hilarious." "Because it's insane?" "Because she always said I'd never find someone willing to put up with me." He smiled slightly. She was probably right. "You seem fairly easy to put up with, all things considered." "All things considered," he echoed. "That's quite the qualifier." Elena studied him in the starlight, this complicated, contradictory man who'd upended her life. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why did you really need a wife?" The real reason, not the public relations answer. He was quiet for a long moment, the whiskey glass turning in his hands. "Because I'm tired," he said finally. "Tired of being alone. Tired of surrounding myself with people I can't trust. Tired of wondering if anyone would care if I disappeared tomorrow beyond what my death would mean for their bank accounts." The raw honesty caught her off guard. "So you bought a wife?" "So I found someone with a reason to stay that had nothing to do with my money or power. Your loyalty is to your family, not to me. That makes you the most trustworthy person in my life." He met her eyes. "Sad, isn't it?" It was sad. Desperately, achingly sad. And Elena felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, but understanding. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what?" "That you felt you had no other choice." He laughed, soft and bitter. "We're both prisoners of our choices, remember? At least we're prisoners together." She should have gone inside then, should have maintained the distance, the boundaries. Instead, she moved closer until she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. "For what it's worth," she said, "I don't think you're as bad as you believe you are. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Maybe not. But I'm learning." She surprised herself by touching his arm briefly. "Get some sleep, Adrian. Tomorrow's our last day here." "Does that make you happy? Going back to reality?" "I don't know what makes me happy anymore," Elena admitted. "But I know staying up until 3 in the morning drinking whiskey and contemplating your loneliness isn't good for either of us." He smiled, genuine and unguarded. "Yes, ma'am." Back in her room, Elena lay awake thinking about the man downstairs, the one she'd married. He wasn't what she'd expected, wasn't the monster she'd needed him to be. He was something more complicated, more human, and that terrified her more than hatred ever could. Their last morning at the cabin, Adrian was quieter than usual. Elena found him packing his things, moving with mechanical efficiency. "Eager to get back?" she asked from the doorway. "Dreading it, actually." He glanced at her. "This week has been peaceful. I'd forgotten what that felt like. We can come back. We will. But it won't be the same once real life intrudes again." He zipped his bag closed. "There are things you need to know before we get back to the city." Elena's stomach tightened. "What things?" "My work. The people you'll meet. The expectations." He sat on the bed, patting the space beside him. "Sit, please." She sat, maintaining careful distance. "Most people in my organization know this marriage is an arrangement," he began. "They won't say it out loud, but they know. What matters is that you play the part convincingly in public. Can you do that?" "Define play the part." "Act like my wife. We need to appear united, comfortable with each other. Physical affection in public, hand-holding, standing close, the occasional kiss if the situation calls for it." He watched her face. "I won't demand anything that makes you truly uncomfortable, but there will be events, dinners, situations where we need to look like a real couple." Elena's throat felt tight. "And in private?" "In private, we continue as we have been. Separate rooms, separate lives, unless you want something different." "I don't." "Then nothing changes." He stood. "There's one more thing. My world is dangerous, Elena. I've made enemies. There are people who would hurt you to hurt me, so there will be security. Always. Bodyguards, protocols, restrictions on where you can go alone." The cage was getting smaller. "For how long?" "The full 2 years. It's non-negotiable." Your safety is my responsibility now. She wanted to argue, but saw the steel in his expression. This wasn't up for debate. Okay, she said quietly. I understand. Do you? He moved closer, and his voice softened. I know this isn't the life you wanted, but I will keep you safe, Elena. That's a promise I can keep. She believed him. Despite everything, she believed he would protect her. The flight back to New York felt like descending into a different world. The peaceful bubble of the cabin burst, replaced by the reality of what her life had become. She was Elena Moretti now. Wife of a crime lord. Player in a game she didn't understand. Adrian's penthouse was in Tribeca, the entire top floor of a modern building with views of the Hudson and enough square footage for a family of 10. Minimalist and expensive, all clean lines and designer furniture. Your room is this way, he said, leading her down a hall. I had Victoria set it up based on what she thought you'd like. If you hate it, we can change everything. The room was beautiful. Soft grays and creams, comfortable furniture, a reading nook by floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena's clothes were already unpacked, hanging in a closet the size of her childhood bedroom. It's perfect, she admitted. Good. He hesitated in the doorway. I have to go out tonight, business. Will you be all right here alone? I'm not a child, Adrian. I know, but this is new and He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly uncertain. There's staff if you need anything. Security in the lobby. You're safe here. I'll be fine. He nodded, but didn't leave immediately. This week was nice. Thank you for trying. You made it easier than I expected. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or longing. We could have more weeks like it, if you wanted. Let's just take it one day at a time. One day at a time, he agreed. I'll see you tomorrow, Elena. After he left, Elena explored the penthouse. It was immaculate and impersonal, like a very expensive hotel. No photos, no personal touches, just beautiful furniture and million-dollar views. She found Adrian's room at the end of the hall, larger than hers, with a king bed and an ensuite bathroom that resembled a spa. It was as impersonal as the rest of the apartment, except for one detail, a photo on the nightstand. Elena picked it up. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes smiled at the camera, her arm around a teenage boy who had Adrian's features but hadn't yet grown into them. His mother, the only personal item in this entire sterile space. The loneliness of it broke her heart a little. She set the photo down carefully and returned to her room, suddenly exhausted. The week at the cabin had been a reprieve, but reality was back now. And reality meant living in this beautiful empty space with a man who'd bought her to fill the void in his life. One day at a time, she reminded herself. She could survive this. She had to. The first month of marriage was an education in duality. By day, Elena learned to navigate the pristine surfaces of her new life. Charity luncheons where women in Chanel suits discussed fundraising over $15 salads, gallery openings where abstract art sold for 6 figures, dinners at restaurants that required reservations months in advance. She smiled at the right moments, laughed at jokes she didn't find funny, and played the role of Adrian Moretti's charming young wife with increasing competence. By night, she returned to the penthouse and the careful dance of proximity and distance she and Adrian had established. They ate dinner together most evenings, conversations ranging from stilted to surprisingly engaging. He told her about his day in carefully edited versions that omitted the criminal details. She told him about the charity work Victoria had arranged, a literacy foundation that let her work with underprivileged kids without raising questions about why she'd left teaching. It was civil, sometimes even pleasant, and that was perhaps the strangest part of all. 3 weeks into their return to the city, Adrian came home with blood on his shirt cuff. Elena was in the kitchen making tea when he walked in, and she froze at the sight of the dark stain against white fabric. It's not mine, he said immediately, following her gaze. I'm fine. Whose is it? Someone who made a very poor decision. He moved to pour himself whiskey, wincing slightly as he raised his arm. You said you weren't hurt. I said the blood wasn't mine. Those are different statements. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. I'm going to shower. Elena watched him disappear down the hall, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her teacup. This was the reality she'd been insulated from, the violence that funded the penthouse and the designer clothes and the casual wealth. Adrian had kept it away from her deliberately, she realized. maintaining the illusion that his business was merely unconventional rather than brutal. But blood on a shirt cuff shattered illusions. 20 minutes later, she knocked on his bedroom door. No answer. She tried the handle, unlocked. Inside, she could hear the shower running. She pushed the door open and called his name. Adrian? What? His voice came muffled through the bathroom door. I'm coming in. Elena, I'm in the shower. She opened the bathroom door anyway. The glass shower was fogged with steam, his silhouette visible but blurred. Let me see the injury you're pretending doesn't exist. A pause. Then the water shut off. Hand me a towel. She grabbed one from the heated rack and held it through the shower door without looking. He took it, and a moment later emerged with it wrapped around his waist, water still dripping from his hair and shoulders. Elena's breath caught despite herself. He was lean muscle and old scars, his torso a map of past violence. It's nothing, he said, but she could see the fresh bruising along his ribs, the split knuckles. Sit. Elena? Sit down, Adrian. Please. He sat on the edge of the bathtub, and Elena retrieved the first aid kit she'd noticed under the sink earlier. Fighting. Sometimes. It's part of the fighting. Sometimes. It's part of the job. Your job is to bleed? My job is to maintain control. Sometimes that requires physical enforcement. He watched her bandage his hand. Does this scare you? Yes. She moved to examine his ribs, fingers gentle against the darkening bruises. But probably not in the way you think. What do you mean? I'm scared because I care if you're hurt. And I shouldn't care. You're my warden, not my... She stopped, unsure how to finish. Not your what? I don't know. She stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they were, how little he was wearing. I should go. His hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Don't, please. Adrian, I keep you separate from this for a reason. You shouldn't have to see the blood, deal with the violence. That's not what I want for you. But it's who you are. It's what I do, not who I am. He released her wrist but held her gaze. There's a difference. Is there? Elena heard the challenge in her voice. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like violence is exactly who Adrian Moretti is. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. You're right. It is who I am. The violence, the control, the blood. I can't separate myself from it any more than I can separate myself from my last name. He stood, and Elena had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. But with you, I want to try. Why? Because you make me remember there's more to life than power and fear. Because when I'm with you, I feel almost human again. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Because you're the first real thing I've had in 10 years, even if you hate me for how I got you. Elena should have pulled away, should have reminded him this was a transaction, nothing more. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. I don't hate you, she whispered. I wish I did. It would be easier. Easier than what? Than this. Whatever this is becoming. When she opened her eyes, his face was closer, his expression raw with something that looked dangerously like hope. What is it becoming, Elena? I don't know. I'm scared to find out. Me too. His thumb traced her lower lip. But maybe we could be scared together. The moment stretched between them, charged and fragile. Elena felt herself swaying forward, drawn by something stronger than logic or self-preservation. His other hand settled at her waist, and she could feel the heat of his skin through her thin sweater. This is a terrible idea, she breathed. The worst, he agreed. Then his lips were on hers, soft and seeking, asking rather than demanding. Elena's hands came up to his bare shoulders, feeling the play of muscle under warm skin. The kiss deepened, and she made a sound that was half surrender, half protest. He pulled back immediately. Too much? No, yes, I don't. She pressed her forehead against his chest, trying to catch her breath. This complicates things. Things are already complicated. More complicated then. She looked up at him. What are we doing, Adrian? Being honest, maybe. For the first time since this started. His hand stroked through her hair. I want you, Elena. Have since the wedding. But not like this. Not if you're going to regret it in the morning. I'll probably regret it regardless of when it happens. A low laugh rumbled through his chest. At least you're honest. Elena stepped back, putting necessary distance between them. I need time to think, to figure out what I want versus what I think I should want. Take all the time you need. But his eyes said he hoped she wouldn't take long. She fled to her room and spent the night staring at the ceiling, her lips still tingling from that kiss, her mind a chaos of conflicting desires. She was attracted to him, had been fighting it for weeks, maybe since the cabin. But attraction and trust were different things, and trust required more than a month of pleasant dinners and careful coexistence. The next morning, Adrian was already gone when she woke. A note on the kitchen counter said he had business in Philadelphia and would be back late. Elena spent the day at the Literacy Foundation, working with kids who reminded her why she'd become a teacher in the first place. The normalcy was grounding, pulling her back from the edge of whatever precipice she'd been standing on last night. But when she returned to the penthouse that evening, she found herself disappointed by his absence. The place felt empty without him, too big, too quiet, too much like the prison she'd feared it would be. She was halfway through a dinner she'd lost interest in when her phone rang. Adrian's name on the screen. Hello? Hey, did you eat? His voice was rough with exhaustion. Yes, are you okay? Fine, just tired. The Philadelphia meeting ran long. A pause. I miss you. The admission caught her off guard. You saw me this morning. I know, still miss you. Another pause. About last night, we don't have to talk about it. I think we do. I don't want things to be awkward between us. Elena carried the phone to the living room, curling up on the couch. I'm not sorry it happened. No? No. But I'm not sure what it means either. It means I care about you more than I probably should given the circumstances. She heard him sigh. I know the timing is terrible. I know I have no right to ask for anything beyond what the contract specifies, but I can't help how I feel. How do you feel? Like maybe this arrangement doesn't have to be as clinical as we thought. Like maybe we could have something real if you're willing to risk it. Elena closed her eyes, her heart pounding. Real is terrifying. I know, but so is pretending we're just business partners when we're clearly becoming something else. What if I'm not ready? Then we wait. I told you, I'm not interested in an unwilling partner. In anything. His voice softened. I can be patient, Elena. I've waited my whole life for something genuine. I can wait a little longer. The tenderness in his words unraveled something in her chest. When will you be home? Tomorrow afternoon. Why? Because I think we should talk. Really talk. About what this is and what we want it to be. Okay. She could hear the smile in his voice. Tomorrow then. Sleep well, Elena. You too. After they hung up, Elena sat in the quiet penthouse and tried to examine her feelings honestly. She was attracted to Adrian, that much was undeniable. But more than that, she was beginning to care for him, to see past the crime lord facade to the lonely, complicated man underneath. The man who cooked her breakfast and asked about her day and looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in the world. Was it Stockholm Syndrome, some psychological adaptation to captivity? Or was it possible to develop genuine feelings for someone under such impossible circumstances? She didn't know, but she was starting to think she wanted to find out. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena tried to focus on grant proposals at the foundation, but her mind kept wandering to the conversation she and Adrian would have. By the time she returned to the penthouse at 4, her nerves were singing with anticipation and anxiety. Adrian was already there, changed from his travel clothes into dark jeans and a navy sweater. He looked tired but alert, and when he saw her, his face transformed with a smile that made her stomach flip. Hi, he said simply. Hi. Elena set down her bag, suddenly awkward. How was Philadelphia? Productive, exhausting, over, thankfully. He moved toward her slowly, like approaching a skittish animal. Can I hug you? The question was so unexpectedly vulnerable that Elena found herself nodding. He pulled her close, and she let herself relax into his warmth, breathing in his familiar scent. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. I've been thinking, she said against his shoulder. About us. About this. And I think I want to try, to see if this could be more than an arrangement. She pulled back to look at him. But I need you to be honest with me. About your work, about the risks, about everything. No more sanitized versions. His expression grew serious. If I'm completely honest, you might not like what you hear. I'd rather know the truth than live in a comfortable lie. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but not here. Let me take you somewhere first. Where? You'll see. Trust me. Elena wasn't sure she did trust him completely, but she let him lead her to the elevator and down to the parking garage, where a sleek black car waited. He drove them through the city as dusk fell, the skyline lighting up against the darkening sky. They crossed the Brooklyn Bridge and wound through neighborhoods Elena recognized from her childhood, until they reached a warehouse in Red Hook. What is this place? She asked as Adrian parked. Part of my business, the part I've been keeping from you. He turned to face her. You want honesty? This is it. He led her inside, past security, who nodded deferentially, through a maze of corridors to an office overlooking a massive warehouse floor. Through the windows, Elena could see dozens of workers packaging and labeling what looked like restaurant supplies. This is a distribution center, Adrian explained. Completely legitimate. We supply restaurants and hotels throughout the Northeast. He pointed to another section. That's imports. Specialty foods from Italy, mostly. Also legitimate. So what's the illegal part? Come here. He took her hand and led her to a different window overlooking a smaller, more secure area. That's where we handle the other business. Money from various sources gets cleaned through the restaurant supplies. The imports sometimes include items that aren't exactly approved by customs, and occasionally we store things for people who need secure locations, no questions asked. Elena processed this, her hand still in his. You're showing me evidence that could put you in prison. I'm showing you the truth, because you asked for it. He turned her to face him. This is who I am, Elena. I run a criminal organization under the cover of legitimate businesses. I break laws. I pay people off. I've hurt people who threatened what's mine. If you can't accept that, tell me now. She looked into his eyes, seeing the challenge and the vulnerability there. He was giving her another out, another chance to walk away. Does anyone die in your business? She asked quietly. Not if I can help it. I'm not in drugs or trafficking. Those markets are too violent, too unpredictable. My business is money and influence. Sometimes that requires intimidation. Rarely, it requires violence. But I don't kill unless there's absolutely no other option. How many times has there been no other option? His jaw tightened. 3. In 12 years. All of them were people who threatened my life or my organization in ways that couldn't be resolved any other way. 3 lives. Elena felt the weight of that number, the reality of what it meant to be married to this man. Tell me about them. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. You want details? I want to know who you are. All of you. The good and the bad and the terrible. So he told her. About the rival who'd tried to poison him and killed 2 of his men in the process. About the traitor within his organization who'd sold information that nearly destroyed everything his father had built. About the man who'd kidnapped and tortured one of his closest associates, someone Adrian considered family. He spoke quietly, factually, but Elena could hear the weight of those choices in his voice. These weren't decisions he'd made lightly or forgotten easily. I don't expect you to forgive it, he finished. But that's the truth. That's who I am when the situation demands it. Elena was quiet for a long time, processing. Have you ever hurt someone who didn't deserve it? Deserve is subjective. But have I hurt someone who wasn't directly threatening me or mine? No, I'm not a sadist, Elena. I don't enjoy violence. It's a tool I use when necessary. What about my father's debt? You threatened him. I threatened consequences for choices he made, but I also offered a solution that saved his life. If I were truly ruthless, he'd be dead, and I would have just taken what his family could pay. Instead, I made a deal that benefited everyone. Benefited you most of all. You got a wife. Did I? He moved closer, his hand coming up to her face. Because right now, I'm not sure if I have a wife or a woman who's going to walk away once she knows the whole truth. Elena leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. I should walk away. I should be horrified and disgusted and... But you're not. But I'm not. She opened her eyes. I don't know what that says about me. It says you understand that people are complicated. That context matters. That the world isn't as black and white as we're taught. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. It says maybe you're strong enough to handle the reality of my life. Or maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe we both are. He smiled slightly. But if we're crazy together, does it matter? Elena found herself smiling back despite everything. When you put it that way, is that a yes? You'll try this with me, knowing everything? She thought about it, really thought about it. About the man who'd blackmailed her into marriage, but also cooked her breakfast and held her when she was sad. Who ran a criminal empire but drew the line at drugs and trafficking. Who'd killed 3 people, but carried the weight of those deaths like stones around his neck. He was complicated and flawed and dangerous. He was also tender and lonely and trying to be better than his circumstances demanded. And she was falling for him despite every logical reason not to. Yes, she said quietly, I'll try. The relief on his face was profound and immediate. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. I won't let you regret this. That's a big promise. I keep my promises. You know that by now. She did know that. Whatever else Adrian Moretti was, he kept his word. They stood like that for a while, just holding each other in the warehouse office, while below them the legitimate and illegitimate sides of his business operated in careful parallel. It was a strange place for a turning point, but somehow fitting. This was Adrian's world, and she was choosing to step into it fully, with open eyes. Take me home, she said finally. The real home. The penthouse. Our home. The way his face lit up at the word our made her heart clench. Okay, let's go home. The drive back was quiet but comfortable, Adrian's hand resting on her knee, her hand covering his. When they got to the penthouse, the energy between them had shifted, charged with possibility and promise. I'm going to make dinner, Adrian announced, heading to the kitchen. Something special, to celebrate. Celebrate what? You, us, the fact that you didn't run screaming when I showed you the warehouse. He pulled ingredients from the refrigerator. Also, I'm Italian. We celebrate everything with food. Elena laughed and settled at the kitchen island, watching him work. He moved with the same confidence he brought to everything, chopping and sautéing with practiced ease. They talked while he cooked, about small things, inconsequential things, the kind of conversation couples had when they were comfortable with each other. And they were becoming comfortable, Elena realized. Somewhere between the forced intimacy of the cabin and the careful coexistence of the past month, they'd developed a rhythm, a partnership that was becoming something deeper. Over dinner, homemade pasta with a sauce that had simmered for an hour, Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. I know this started badly, he said. I know I manipulated the situation to get what I wanted, but I need you to know something. What? I'm grateful. Every day I'm grateful that circumstances brought you into my life, even if the circumstances were terrible. You make everything better, brighter, more bearable. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for giving this a chance. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared, Adrian, of how much I'm starting to feel, of how fast this is moving. Then we slow down. We go at whatever pace you need. What if I don't want to slow down? Something heated flared in his eyes. Then we don't. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibility. Elena stood, still holding his hand, and pulled him to his feet. Show me your room, she said quietly. The real one, not the guest room version you gave me the tour of. Elena, I'm sure, if you are. He searched her face, then nodded. I'm sure. I've been sure since the wedding. He led her down the hall to his room, and this time when he closed the door behind them, it felt like a beginning rather than an ending. Like 2 people choosing each other rather than being forced together by debt and desperation. We can just sleep, he offered. Just be close. We don't have to. She silenced him with a kiss, pouring into it all the confusion and longing and tentative hope of the past month. He responded carefully at first, then with growing passion when she pressed closer. Are you sure? He murmured against her lips. Stop asking me that. I'll tell you if I'm not. He smiled and kissed her again, deeper this time, his hand sliding into her hair. Elena let herself fall into it, into him, into the terrifying exhilaration of wanting someone she'd started out hating. Later, wrapped in his sheets with his arm around her waist, Elena stared at the ceiling and tried to process what had just happened. She'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross, had turned a business arrangement into something irrevocably personal. Regrets? Adrian's voice was quiet in the darkness. Ask me in the morning. That's not a no. She turned to face him, studying his features in the dim light from the windows. No regrets. Maybe some terror, but no regrets. I can work with terror. He pulled her closer. We'll figure this out together. Together, she echoed, and let herself believe it might actually be possible. The morning brought clarity and questions in equal measure. Elena woke in Adrian's bed with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and his arms still wrapped around her waist. For a moment, she let herself simply exist in that space, warm and safe and wanted. Then reality crept in with all its complications. She'd slept with her husband, her actual husband, not just the man she'd been forced to marry. The distinction mattered more than she'd expected. I can hear you thinking, Adrian murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Too loud for this early. What time is it? 7. We could sleep more. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Or we could talk about whatever's making your brain work overtime. Elena turned to face him, studying his features in the morning light. He looked younger like this, unguarded and relaxed. I'm trying to figure out what happens now. Now we have breakfast. I make excellent French toast. Adrian, Elena. He smiled slightly. I know what you're asking. What does last night mean? Where do we go from here? Have we fundamentally changed the nature of our arrangement? His hand came up to cup her face. The answer is whatever you want it to mean. We can call it a one-time thing, or we can acknowledge that we're becoming something more than a contract marriage. Which do you want? I want you to move into this room. I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to stop pretending we're just business partners when we're clearly becoming... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. When we're clearly becoming important to each other. The vulnerability in his admission made her chest ache. I'm still scared. Good. Fear means you're taking this seriously. He kissed her forehead. I'm scared too. I've never had something real to lose before. It's terrifying. Elena closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. One step at a time? One step at a time, he agreed, starting with French toast. I'm not kidding about being excellent at it. He was excellent at it, and at making her laugh while he cooked, and at the casual intimacy of moving around the kitchen together like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Elena found herself relaxing into it, letting go of some of the anxiety about what they were becoming. They were halfway through breakfast when Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted. All business. I need to take this. He stood, squeezing her shoulder as he passed. 2 minutes. Elena watched him disappear into his study, the easy warmth of the morning suddenly feeling fragile. This was the reality of his life. Business that couldn't wait, calls that interrupted everything, a world that demanded his attention regardless of what else was happening. She was clearing the dishes when he returned, and one look at his face told her the news wasn't good. What's wrong? There's a situation. Victor Rinaldi is making moves against my territory. He ran a hand through his hair. He's been quiet for months, but apparently he's decided now is the time to test my boundaries. Who's Victor Rinaldi? Competition. He runs operations in Queens and parts of Long Island. We've had an understanding for years. He stays in his territory, I stay in mine. But he's ambitious, and he thinks I'm distracted by... Adrian gestured between them. By personal matters. He's not entirely wrong. Elena's stomach tightened. What kind of moves? Poaching my suppliers, undercutting my prices, spreading rumors that I'm weak, typical territorial bullshit. But his jaw was tight, his eyes hard. I need to handle this before it escalates. How do you handle something like this? He studied her for a moment, clearly debating how much to share. I call a meeting. We discuss terms. We reach an understanding, or we don't. If we don't, he stopped. If you don't, then what? Then things get complicated. He moved closer, his hands settling on her shoulders. I need you to promise me something. What? If I tell you to stay somewhere, you stay. If security says you need to move, you move. No questions, no arguments. His grip tightened slightly. Victor wouldn't hesitate to use you against me if he knew how much you matter. I need to know you'll follow protocols. The seriousness in his voice sent a chill through her. You think I'm in danger? I think you're my wife, and that makes you a target. I've been careful to keep you insulated, but if Victor's making aggressive moves, all bets are off. He pulled her close. I won't let anything happen to you, but you need to work with me. Elena nodded against his chest. Okay, I'll follow protocols. Thank you. He held her for another moment, then stepped back. I need to go. There's a meeting in an hour. Will you be all right here? I'll be fine. I have foundation work to catch up on. Take Marcus with you if you go out. Marcus was the head of her security detail, a former Marine who took his job very seriously. And Elena? Yeah. This doesn't change what's happening between us. You and me, what we're building, that's separate from this business with Victor. She wanted to believe him, but the worried crease between his eyebrows suggested even he wasn't entirely convinced. The next week was tense. Adrian came home late every night, exhausted and tight-jawed, offering minimal details about his meetings with Victor. Elena tried to give him space while also being supportive, a balance she was still learning. They still shared a bed, still maintained the intimacy they'd established, but she could feel him pulling away mentally, consumed by whatever was happening with his rival. Talk to me, she said one night after he'd been staring at his laptop for 3 hours. You're shutting me out. I'm trying to protect you. By freezing me out? That's not protection, that's isolation. She moved to sit beside him on the couch. You said you'd be honest with me. That includes when things are bad. He closed the laptop, rubbing his eyes. Victor's refusing to back down. He's escalating instead of negotiating. He hit one of my warehouses last night. Minor damage, but it's a message. What kind of message? That he's not afraid of me. That he thinks he can take what's mine. Adrian's voice was cold, dangerous. He's wrong. What are you going to do? What I have to. Hit back harder, make it clear there are consequences for challenging me. He looked at her. This is the part of my life I wanted to keep from you. The violence, the ugliness, but you wanted honesty, so here it is. I'm going to hurt people who work for Victor. I'm going to destroy his operations until he either backs down or comes at me directly. Elena processed this, her heart racing. And if he comes at you directly, then I end him, said simply, matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. You mean kill him? If necessary. He's threatening everything I've built, everyone who depends on me, including you now. His hand found hers. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I signed up for you, all of you. She squeezed his hand. I'm not going anywhere. Something in his expression cracked, showing the fear underneath. You might not have a choice. If this goes badly, if Victor makes a real move, Elena, you need to understand how dangerous this is. Then explain it to me. Stop trying to shield me and just tell me what's happening. So he did. He told her about the fragile balance of power in the city's underworld, the alliances and rivalries that kept things from exploding into all-out war. He told her about Victor's reputation for brutality, about the people who'd crossed him and disappeared. He told her about his own reputation, carefully maintained through years of strategic violence and unwavering follow-through on threats. If I show weakness now, others will see it, he finished. Victor is testing me, but everyone's watching. How I respond will determine whether I keep control or lose everything. So you have no choice but to escalate. Not if I want to survive in this world. Elena was quiet for a long time, processing the impossible mathematics of his life. Violence begetting violence, power maintained through fear, survival depending on appearing invincible. What can I do to help? Stay safe. That's all I need from you. That's not all you need. You need someone who understands what you're facing, someone you can talk to. She moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. Let me be that person. He held her tightly, his face buried in her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you have me anyway. They went to bed wrapped around each other, and Elena lay awake long after Adrian fell into exhausted sleep, listening to his breathing and wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Not the marriage. She'd made peace with that. But this deeper involvement, this emotional investment in a man whose life was built on violence and moral compromise. She should have been horrified, should have been planning her exit strategy. Instead, she was planning how to help him survive. The gala was scheduled for Saturday night, a fundraiser for children's literacy that Elena's foundation had organized months ago. Adrian had initially planned to attend, using it as an opportunity to demonstrate unity and normalcy to their social circle. But with the Victor situation escalating, his security team advised against it. Too public, too many variables, Marcus explained during a briefing at the penthouse. If Rinaldi wanted to make a statement, a high-profile event like this would be perfect. So we don't go, Adrian said immediately. Problem solved. We have to go. Elena looked between them. I'm the honorary chair. If I don't show up to my own event, people will talk. It'll look like weakness. Let them talk. Your safety is more important than appearances. Since when do you care more about safety than appearances? She crossed her arms. You just told me that showing weakness invites challenges. Well, hiding from Victor is showing weakness. Adrian's jaw tightened. That's different. How? Because you're involved. The risk calculus changes completely when it's your life on the line. The raw protectiveness in his voice made her soften slightly. I have an entire security team. We'll be in a room full of wealthy donors and security. It's probably safer than staying home. She has a point, Marcus interjected reluctantly. We can control a venue like the plaza better than we can control random threats. At least we'd know where the danger points are. Adrian looked between them, clearly hating every word. If we do this, and I mean if, you don't leave my side for a second. You follow every security protocol exactly, and the moment anything feels off, we leave. Understood? Understood. Elena moved to him, taking his hands. Nothing's going to happen. Victor's not stupid enough to make a move at a charity gala. You don't know Victor. But he pulled her close anyway, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Fine. We go. But I'm quadrupling security. The night of the gala, Elena took extra care with her appearance. The dress was midnight blue silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, elegant and understated. Her hair was swept up, diamond earrings, a gift from Adrian, catching the light. When she emerged from her dressing room, Adrian was waiting in a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad. You're beautiful, he said quietly, his eyes tracking over her. Dangerously so. Dangerously? Every man in that room is going to want you. I'll have to fight the urge to punch them all. He smiled slightly. It'll be very distracting from the security concerns. Elena laughed despite her nerves. Try to restrain yourself. Assault charges would be bad publicity. For you, I'll try. The ride to the plaza was tense despite their banter. Elena could feel Adrian's coiled energy, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. Marcus and 3 other security personnel followed in a second car, and she noticed additional unmarked vehicles trailing them as well. Is all this really necessary? She asked quietly. Necessary is relative, but I'd rather have too much security than not enough. He took her hand, thumb stroking her knuckles. Humor me. The gala was already in full swing when they arrived, the ballroom glittering with Manhattan's elite. Elena recognized faces from previous events, along with foundation board members and major donors. The sight was both familiar and surreal, her old life and new life colliding in a room full of people who had no idea what was really happening beneath the surface of Adrian and Elena Moretti's picture-perfect marriage. Mr. and Mrs. Moretti! The foundation director, Catherine Walsh, swept over with a brilliant smile. You both look absolutely stunning. Elena, everyone's been asking about you. Sorry we're a bit late, Elena said smoothly, slipping into her public persona. Last-minute crisis at one of Adrian's businesses. Nothing serious, I hope? Already resolved. Adrian's smile was charming and completely fake. Shall we make the rounds? I know Elena's eager to thank the donors personally. They moved through the room with practiced ease. Elena introducing Adrian to people he'd never met while he played the role of supportive husband perfectly. His hand stayed at her back or holding hers, a constant point of contact that grounded her. To everyone watching, they were the ideal couple, young, beautiful, clearly in love. Only Elena felt the tension in Adrian's body, saw the way his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging threats and exits. They were talking with a major donor when Elena noticed a man watching them from across the room. Older, maybe 50, with silver hair and a face that looked carved from granite. He raised his glass in a mocking toast when he caught her looking. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, I see him. Adrian's voice was tight. That's Victor. The bottom dropped out of her stomach. He's here? Apparently. Marcus, he spoke quietly into the microphone hidden in his cuff. Eyes on Rinaldi. Northwest corner. Don't engage, just monitor. What's he doing here? Elena tried to keep her voice calm, her smile in place for anyone watching. Making a point, showing he's not afraid to get close. Adrian's hand tightened on her waist. We're leaving. We can't just leave. People will notice. I don't care. You're not staying in a room with him. But before they could move, Victor started walking toward them, cutting through the crowd with deliberate purpose. Adrian shifted, placing himself slightly in front of Elena, his body language screaming protection and threat in equal measure. Moretti. Victor's voice was smooth, cultured, completely at odds with the danger Elena sensed radiating from him. And this must be the famous bride. How lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Moretti. Mr. Rinaldi. Elena kept her voice steady, channeling every ounce of poise she'd learned in the past months. I didn't realize you were interested in literacy programs. Oh, I'm interested in many things. Education, community development, expansion opportunities. His smile was sharp. Your husband and I have been having fascinating discussions about territories and boundaries. I thought it might be illuminating to meet the woman who's been occupying so much of his attention lately. My wife is off limits. Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. Whatever business you and I have, she's not part of it. Of course not. I'm simply offering my congratulations. Marriage is such a significant step, especially when it's so... Victor paused, his eyes glittering with malice. So sudden and convenient. The implication hung in the air. He knew. Knew the marriage was an arrangement, knew about her father's debt, probably knew more about their situation than Elena was comfortable with. Thank you for your well wishes, she said coolly, before Adrian could respond with violence. If you'll excuse us, we have donors to thank. Certainly. But before you go, Victor pulled an envelope from his jacket. An invitation. I'm hosting a small gathering next week, just a few influential people. I'd be honored if you both would attend. A chance for us to discuss our mutual interests in a more relaxed setting. Adrian's entire body had gone rigid. We'll have to check our schedule. Do that. Victor handed the envelope to Elena, his fingers brushing hers deliberately. I do hope you'll come, Mrs. Moretti. I think you'd find the conversation enlightening. He walked away before either of them could respond, disappearing into the crowd like he'd never been there. Elena's hands were shaking. Adrian noticed immediately, taking the envelope from her and pocketing it. We're done here, he said flatly. Marcus, bring the car around. Now. Adrian, we can't just... Watch me. He was already guiding her toward the exit, his hand firm on her back. Catherine, my apologies. Family emergency. Elena will call you tomorrow. They were in the car within minutes, Adrian's security team forming a protective convoy around them. Elena sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Victor Rinaldi had approached them at a public event, in front of hundreds of witnesses, and made it clear he knew exactly where to find her and how to hurt Adrian. Say something, Adrian demanded, his voice rough. Yell at me for dragging you into this. Tell me you want out, something. I'm not yelling. I'm thinking. About what? About how we handle this. Because running away isn't going to solve anything. She turned to face him. He wants you rattled. He wants you making mistakes out of fear for me. We can't give him that. He threatened you. He congratulated us on our marriage. Witnesses will back that up. He was perfectly polite. Elena's mind was racing, seeing the trap Victor was laying. But you're right about what he meant underneath. He's using me to get to you. Which is exactly why you need to stay as far away from him as possible. Or we use it against him. An idea was forming, reckless and terrifying. He invited us to his party. What if we go? Adrian stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Absolutely not. Hear me out. He's expecting you to hide me away, to be so afraid for my safety that you make defensive moves. What if instead we show up together, completely unafraid? It flips the script, makes him question whether he actually has the leverage he thinks he does. Or it puts you directly in his crosshairs. I'm already in his crosshairs. At least this way we control the situation. She grabbed his hand. You said showing weakness invites challenges. Well, hiding your wife shows weakness. But bringing her to your enemy's party, that shows strength. He was quiet for a long time, his jaw working. You're not trained for this. You don't know how dangerous. Then train me. Teach me what I need to know to survive in your world. Elena's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I'm not some delicate thing that needs to be locked away, Adrian. I'm your wife, your partner. Let me act like it. You could get hurt. We could both get hurt. That's the reality we're living in. She moved closer, her hand on his face. But I'd rather face it with you than hide while you fight alone. Adrian closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. You're going to give me a heart attack. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. I need to think about it, talk to my security team. If, and this is a massive if, we did this, you'd need training, real training, how to spot threats, how to protect yourself, protocols for every possible scenario. I can do that. And you'd follow my lead completely. No improvising, no heroics. You do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. Agreed. He opened his eyes, studying her face in the dim light of the car. When did you become so brave? When I married you. Turns out living with a crime lord forces you to level up pretty quickly. She smiled slightly. Besides, I'm tired of being afraid. If Victor Rinaldi wants to use me as a weapon against you, he's going to find out I bite back. Adrian's laugh was startled and genuine. That's my girl. He pulled her close, kissing her hard and desperate. We're going to have to be so careful. I know. And I'm going to be impossibly overprotective. I know that too. And if anything happens to you, I will burn his entire world to ash. Elena believed him. She could hear it in his voice, see it in his eyes, the absolute certainty that he would destroy everything and everyone to keep her safe. Nothing's going to happen to me, she said firmly, because we're going to be smarter than him, faster, better prepared. She settled against his chest, listening to his racing heart. We're going to show Victor Rinaldi exactly what kind of mistake he made when he threatened us. Adrian's arms tightened around her, and Elena felt the shift between them, from protector and protected to true partners. Two people facing danger together instead of one trying to shield the other. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, and somewhere in the midst of all the danger and strategy, Elena realized she'd fallen completely in love with her husband. Not the arrangement, not the security he provided, but the man himself, complicated and dangerous, and trying desperately to keep her safe even when she refused to stay in the shadows. She didn't tell him. Not yet. The timing was terrible, the circumstances impossible, but she knew. And that changed everything. The training started the next morning. Elena woke at 5 to find Adrian already dressed in workout clothes, 2 cups of coffee waiting on the kitchen counter. We start now, he said simply. If we're doing this, you need to be ready. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later with a woman Elena hadn't met. Tall, lean, with ice blue eyes that assessed her like a threat. This is Sophia, Adrian introduced. Former CIA, now she runs personal security training. She's going to teach you everything you need to know about staying alive in dangerous situations. Sophia's handshake was firm, professional. Mrs. Moretti, I understand you want to attend Victor Rinaldi's party. That's the plan. Then we have a lot of work to do in very little time. Sophia gestured toward the gym. Let's start with basics. How to read a room, identify exits, spot weapons. Then we move to defensive techniques. The next 5 days were brutal. Sophia drilled Elena relentlessly on situational awareness, teaching her to catalog faces and movements without appearing to watch. She learned where people typically concealed weapons, how to identify security personnel versus actual threats, the subtle signs that preceded violence. Her body ached from practicing defensive moves, how to break a grip, create distance, protect vital areas if someone grabbed her. You're not trying to win a fight, Sophia explained during one particularly exhausting session. You're trying to survive long enough for help to arrive. Big difference. Adrian watched many of the sessions, his expression tight with worry and something that looked like pride. In the evenings, they went over scenarios together, Adrian playing the role of Victor, while Elena practiced maintaining composure under pressure. He'll try to rattle you, Adrian said during one of these rehearsals. Bring up your father, the circumstances of our marriage, anything he thinks will get a reaction. You need to stay calm, give him nothing. What if he threatens me directly? Then you smile, make an excuse, and move toward me or Marcus. We'll have people positioned throughout his house. You're never more than 10 feet from backup. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. I still hate this plan. I know, but it's going to work. Your confidence is either inspiring or terrifying. I can't decide which. The night of Victor's party arrived too quickly. Elena dressed carefully in a deep green dress that was elegant but allowed movement, Sophia's suggestion. She kept her jewelry minimal, her hair in a style that couldn't be easily grabbed. Every choice was strategic, weaponizing her appearance while maintaining the illusion of casual elegance. Adrian emerged from his room in a dark suit, and the look in his eyes when he saw her was pure heat mixed with concern. You look perfect, he said quietly. Too perfect. Every instinct I have is screaming to lock you in this penthouse and go alone. Your instincts kept you alive this long, but sometimes survival means taking calculated risks. She moved to him, adjusting his tie. We're going to walk in there together, show Victor he doesn't scare us, and walk out together. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. Then we make it look simple. She kissed him softly. Trust me? With my life. It's your life I'm worried about. The drive to Victor's estate in Westchester was tense, despite their outward calm. Marcus drove while 2 additional security vehicles followed at careful distances. Adrian held Elena's hand the entire way, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, the only sign of his anxiety. Victor's house was a sprawling mansion designed to intimidate, all stone and iron gates and security that rivaled military installations. They were searched at the gate, their car inspected, before being allowed to proceed up the long driveway. Last chance to change your mind, Adrian murmured as they approached the entrance. Not changing my mind. Elena squeezed his hand. Let's show him who he's dealing with. The interior was even more ostentatious than the exterior. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. About 30 people mingled in the main room, all of them radiating the particular danger of Adrian's world. These weren't society donors or business executives. These were criminals dressed in expensive suits, but unmistakably dangerous. Victor stood at the center of it all, holding court like a king. When he saw them enter, his smile was sharp and triumphant. Adrian, and the lovely Mrs. Moretti, I'm so glad you could make it. He crossed to them, arms spread in welcome that felt like a threat. Please, come in. Can I get you both drinks? We're fine, thank you. Adrian's voice was cool, controlled. Impressive gathering. Just a few friends and associates, people who understand the value of loyalty and the cost of betrayal. Victor's eyes slid to Elena. Your wife is even more beautiful up close. You're a lucky man, Adrian. I'm aware. Adrian's hand settled possessively at Elena's waist. Shall we discuss why you really invited us here? I assume it wasn't just for social pleasantries. Always so direct. That's what I appreciate about you, Moretti. No pretense. Victor gestured toward a private study off the main room. Why don't we talk business? Mrs. Moretti can mingle with the other guests. My wife stays with me. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. Come now, I'm sure she'd be more comfortable. I go where my husband goes, Mr. Rinaldi. Elena's voice was steady, channeling every ounce of the poise she'd been practicing. Unless you have something to discuss that you're afraid for me to hear? Victor's smile tightened. Not at all. By all means, join us. It's rare to find a woman interested in business discussions. The study was smaller, more intimate, with 3 men already waiting, Victor's top lieutenants, Elena guessed. Marcus followed them in, positioning himself near the door with deceptive casualness. So, Victor began, settling behind an ornate desk. Let's talk about territories. You've been very resistant to my proposals for expansion, Adrian. I'm curious why. Because your proposals involve taking what's mine. I have no interest in ceding territory. Not ceding, sharing. There's enough money in this city for both of us to prosper. Victor leaned back, his eyes calculating. Unless you're so distracted by domestic matters that you can't see the opportunity. There it was. The implication that Elena was weakening Adrian, making him vulnerable. My personal life has no bearing on my business decisions, Adrian said coldly. The answer is still no. Even if saying no has consequences? Victor's tone hardened. You're not as untouchable as you think, Moretti. Your warehouses, your operations, your people, all vulnerable, all potential targets. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. You've been coasting on your father's reputation for years, but he's gone, and you're not him. You're softer, more sentimental. Victor's gaze slid to Elena. Especially now. Elena felt Adrian tense beside her, saw the muscle jump in his jaw. This was the moment. Victor was pushing, trying to provoke a reaction that would prove his point about Adrian being weak. She spoke before Adrian could respond, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Mr. Rinaldi, I'm curious about something. You seem very focused on my husband's supposed weaknesses. But you're the one who had to resort to petty warehouse raids and price wars instead of actually competing. That suggests you're the one who's weak. The room went deadly silent. Victor's eyes snapped to her, surprise flickering across his face before it hardened into something dangerous. Excuse me? You invited us here to intimidate us, to show off your power and your connections. But really, you're just scared. Elena kept her voice calm, almost conversational. You're scared that Adrian has something you don't. Loyalty that's earned, not bought through fear. A partner who makes him stronger, not weaker. And that terrifies you because you'll never have it. Elena. Adrian's voice held warning, but also something else. Pride, maybe. No, let her speak. Victor leaned forward, his smile gone. I'm fascinated to hear what a former schoolteacher thinks she understands about my world. I understand that you're so threatened by my husband that you had to create this entire performance to try to rattle him, but here's what you didn't account for. She met his eyes steadily. I'm not a weakness. I'm a weapon. And you just gave me all the ammunition I need. Victor's expression darkened. Careful, Mrs. Moretti. Brave words from someone in a very vulnerable position. Am I? Elena smiled slightly. Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one making threats in front of witnesses, including your own people. You're the one who's so desperate to prove dominance that you had to invite your competition to your home. That's not strength, Mr. Rinaldi. That's desperation. One of Victor's lieutenants shifted uncomfortably. Elena caught the movement, the subtle crack in Victor's united front. She pressed the advantage. How many of your people are here tonight because they're loyal versus because they're afraid? How many would stay if they had a better option? She glanced at the three men behind Victor. My husband inspires loyalty by being worth following. What do you inspire besides fear? Enough. Victor stood, his voice sharp. You've made your point. You're clever and brave and utterly foolish. Adrian, control your wife before she says something that has real consequences. She's saying what I've been too polite to say. Adrian stood as well, and Elena could feel the violence coiling in him, barely restrained. You want a war, Victor? You'll get one. But don't mistake my marriage for weakness. Elena isn't my vulnerability. She's my reason to destroy anyone who threatens what's mine. The temperature in the room dropped. Victor's hand moved toward his desk drawer, and everything happened at once. Marcus surged forward, weapon drawn. The three lieutenants reached for their guns. Adrian moved in front of Elena, shielding her with his body. And somewhere in the house, an alarm started blaring. Nobody move! Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. Hands where I can see them! But one of Victor's men ignored the order, his gun coming up aimed at Adrian. Elena saw it happening in slow motion, the weapon rising, the finger tightening on the trigger, Adrian in the line of fire with no cover. Training took over. Elena grabbed a heavy crystal paperweight from the desk and threw it hard, catching the gunman in the temple. He went down, the gun firing wild, the bullet embedding in the ceiling. The distraction gave Marcus the opening he needed. He disarmed the other two men while Adrian vaulted the desk and had Victor pinned before anyone could blink. Call them off, Adrian snarled, his forearm across Victor's throat. Call off your people or I end this right now. The study door burst open, more of Victor's security, more guns. But they froze when they saw their boss being choked by Adrian Moretti while Marcus held weapons on the other three men. Stand down, Victor managed to gasp. Everyone stand down. The security hesitated, then slowly lowered their weapons. The alarm cut off, leaving ringing silence. Adrian held Victor for another moment, then released him with a shove. This is over. You challenge me again. You threaten my wife again, and I won't be stopping at your warehouses or your bank accounts. I'll dismantle everything you've built and salt the earth behind me. Understood? Victor rubbed his throat, rage and grudging respect warring in his expression. Understood. Good. Adrian took Elena's hand, pulling her toward the door. Marcus, we're leaving. If anyone tries to stop us, shoot them. They walked out of that house with Elena's heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe, past shocked guests and armed security who parted like water. Nobody tried to stop them. Nobody even spoke. It wasn't until they were in the car, speeding down the driveway with Marcus at the wheel, that Elena started shaking. You threw a paperweight at an armed man, Adrian said, his voice caught between horror and hysterical laughter. You actually threw a paperweight. He was going to shoot you. Elena's teeth were chattering. I couldn't just watch him shoot you. You could have been killed. He could have turned on you. But he didn't. And you're alive. She grabbed his face, making him look at her. We're both alive. We won. We survived. That's not the same as winning. It is tonight. She kissed him hard, tasting fear and relief and adrenaline. Tonight we survived together. Adrian pulled her into his lap, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Don't ever do that again. Do what? Save your life? Scare me like that. I aged 10 years when you grabbed that paperweight. But he was kissing her between words, his hands shaking as they cupped her face. You're insane. Brilliant and insane. I learned from the best. Marcus cleared his throat from the front seat. Hate to interrupt, but we've got a tail. 2 cars just pulled onto the road behind us. Adrian looked out the back window, his body going tense again. Victor's people? Unknown. Could be backup, could be retaliation. Marcus accelerated. Hold on. The next 10 minutes were a blur of speed and sharp turns, Marcus driving with the precision of someone who'd done tactical driving courses. The cars followed relentlessly, closing distance. Elena pressed against Adrian, feeling his heart racing as fast as hers. We need to lose them before they box us in, Marcus said tightly. There's a construction zone ahead. I can use that. Do it. They shot through an area of orange cones and barriers, Marcus weaving between obstacles with inches to spare. One of the following cars clipped a barrier and spun out. The other stayed on them, determined. Persistent, Marcus muttered. Then his phone rang. He answered on speaker. Yeah? It's Sophia. We've got the second car. Stand down. They're ours. Marcus eased off the accelerator. Say again? The second vehicle is our backup team. We've been running parallel surveillance all night in case things went south. Sophia's voice was calm, professional. The first car was Rinaldi's, but we've dealt with them. You're clear to proceed home. Adrian exhaled slowly. Sophia, you're getting a raise. Already planning to ask for one. See you at the penthouse for debrief. The rest of the drive was quiet, both of them coming down from the adrenaline high. When they finally reached the penthouse, Elena's legs were shaky as she stepped out of the car. The full reality of what had happened was hitting her. She'd thrown a paperweight at an armed man. She could have been shot. They both could have been killed. I need to sit down, she said faintly. Adrian guided her inside and to the couch, pouring her whiskey with hands that were finally steady. Drink this. She drank, the burn grounding her. That was insane, reckless, the bravest thing I've ever seen. He sat beside her, pulling her close. You saved my life tonight. You would have done the same. In a heartbeat. But that doesn't make it less terrifying to watch you in danger. He pressed his face against her hair. I love you. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Elena. Completely, desperately. In a way that makes me want to lock you in the safest place I can find and never let you out. Elena pulled back to look at him, seeing the raw emotion in his eyes. I love you too. I've been trying not to, but I can't help it. You're infuriating and dangerous and completely impossible, and I love you anyway. His kiss was fierce and tender, tasting like whiskey and relief. We're going to have to be so careful from now on. Victor won't forget tonight. Good. I don't want him to forget. I want him to remember that threatening us has consequences. When did you become so bloodthirsty? When I married you. Turns out living with a crime lord changes a person. She smiled against his lips. I'm not the same girl you blackmailed into marriage. No, you're stronger, braver, more terrifying. He kissed her again. And completely mine. Completely yours, she agreed. As long as you're completely mine. Deal. The debrief with Sophia and Marcus lasted until past midnight. They reviewed everything that had happened, identified security weaknesses, discussed protocols for future situations. Elena answered questions about her observations in Victor's house, impressing both security professionals with her attention to detail. You have good instincts, Sophia said approvingly. With more training, you could actually be an asset in situations like this rather than just a protected party. Is that an offer? It's an observation. But if you're interested in continuing training, I'd be willing. Sophia glanced at Adrian. With your husband's permission. Of course. It's not my decision, Adrian said immediately. If Elena wants to train, she trains. After they left, Elena and Adrian finally made it to bed, both exhausted but too wired to sleep. They lay tangled together in the darkness, processing everything that had happened. What happens now? Elena asked quietly. With Victor, with your business, with everything? Now we wait and see if he respects boundaries or if we have to escalate. But he showed weakness tonight. His own people saw him lose control, saw you read him perfectly. That damages his reputation. Adrian's hand stroked through her hair. You did that. You got in his head and made him make mistakes. I just said what I observed. You weaponized those observations. There's a difference. He kissed her forehead. You're a natural at this, which should probably worry me but mostly makes me proud. I had a good teacher. I didn't teach you courage. You brought that with you. Elena thought about the frightened girl who'd signed a contract 2 months ago, agreeing to marry a stranger to save her family. That girl seemed like a different person now, smaller, more afraid, less certain of her own strength. I think marrying you saved me, she said softly. Not from my father's debt, from being invisible, from accepting that I deserved less than I wanted. You were never invisible. I saw you from the first moment. You saw someone you could use. I saw someone strong enough to sacrifice everything for the people she loved. I saw someone who could match me. His arms tightened around her. I saw my future, even if I didn't know it yet. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. Two people who'd started as enemies and become something far more complicated and precious. The next morning brought news that spread through the underworld like wildfire. Victor Rinaldi had suffered a major defection. 3 of his top lieutenants, including 2 who'd been in the study that night, had approached Adrian's organization about switching sides. They'd seen weakness in Victor's leadership and strength in the way Adrian and Elena had handled themselves. They want to work for you, Marcus explained during breakfast. They're bringing detailed information about Victor's operations as a signing bonus. Adrian looked at Elena across the table. What do you think? You're asking me? You're my partner. This decision affects both of us. Elena considered. Can we trust them? Not entirely, but we can use them. And accepting them sends a message that Victor's empire is crumbling. Adrian stirred his coffee. It also gives us intelligence we couldn't get any other way. Then we take the meeting, but carefully. Over the next few weeks, the power shift became undeniable. Victor's organization was hemorrhaging people and territory, while Adrian's grew stronger. The confrontation at Victor's house, rather than showing Adrian's weakness, had demonstrated exactly the opposite. He had a partner who made him more formidable, not less. Someone willing to fight beside him, rather than hide behind him. The Criminal Council, the shadowy group of leaders who maintained order in New York's underworld, took notice. They called a meeting, inviting Adrian to present his case for expanded territory and authority. They want to meet you too, Adrian told Elena one evening. The council. They want to see the woman who threw a paperweight at a gunman and lived to tell about it. Is that normal? Inviting wives to council meetings? Nothing about you is normal, Elena. You've fundamentally changed the game. He smiled slightly. They're either going to embrace you or try to eliminate you as a threat. Should be an interesting meeting. The council gathered in a neutral location, a private club in Midtown that officially hosted business dinners and unofficially hosted criminal summits. Elena dressed carefully in a navy suit that Sophia had helped her select, projecting authority without aggression. Remember, Adrian murmured as they entered, let me do most of the talking. But if they ask you direct questions, answer honestly. They respect honesty more than flattery. The council consisted of 7 people, ranging in age from 50 to 75, representing different aspects of organized crime in the city. They watched Elena and Adrian enter with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Adrian Moretti, the eldest member, a woman named Lucia, spoke first. And this must be the formidable Elena. We've heard interesting stories about you, my dear. I'm sure most of them are exaggerated, Elena said calmly. Are they? We heard you challenge Victor Rinaldi in his own home, called him weak in front of his lieutenants, then assaulted one of his armed men with office supplies. Lucia's lips twitched. I rather hope those stories aren't exaggerated. It's been dull around here lately. The council asked questions about the marriage, about Elena's role in Adrian's organization, about her intentions. She answered carefully but truthfully, explaining that she'd married Adrian under duress, but had chosen to stay out of love. That she'd become involved in his business because hiding from reality seemed cowardly. That she intended to support her husband in whatever ways made them both stronger. You understand this isn't a world that typically welcomes women as equals, one of the male council members said, his tone dismissive. Then perhaps it's time that changed, Elena replied evenly. Half your potential workforce and talent pool is female. Seems short-sighted to waste that resource because of outdated prejudices. Lucia laughed outright. I like her, Adrian. She's got spine. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, the council had not only approved Adrian's expanded territory, but formally recognized Elena as his partner and equal within the organization. It was unprecedented, shocking, and exactly what they'd been working toward. You did it, Adrian said as they left, his voice filled with wonder. You actually did it. They recognized you. We did it. Together. Elena leaned against him as they walked to the car. Though I may have aged 10 years during that meeting, you were perfect. Confident, smart, exactly the right balance of respectful and assertive. He pulled her close. I'm so proud of you. Yeah? She looked up at him, seeing the love and admiration in his eyes. Yeah, he kissed her softly. You're not just my wife anymore, Elena. You're my queen, and everyone knows it. The months that followed brought more changes. Elena continued training with Sophia, becoming genuinely skilled in self-defense and tactical thinking. She expanded her role at the Literacy Foundation while also taking on strategic planning for Adrian's legitimate businesses. They developed systems for keeping his legal and illegal operations separate, protecting her from direct involvement in criminal activity while still maintaining their partnership. Victor Rinaldi, weakened and humiliated, eventually approached Adrian with a peace offering, complete withdrawal from disputed territories in exchange for being left alone in his remaining operations. Adrian accepted, magnanimous in victory. He'll try again eventually, Adrian told Elena after the treaty was signed. Men like Victor don't stay down forever. Then we'll handle it when he does, together. 6 months into their marriage, Elena's mother invited them to Sunday dinner. It was the first time Elena had seen her family since the wedding, the distance having been necessary while emotions were still raw. Her father answered the door, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. Then he pulled her into a hug, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, mija. I'm so sorry for what I put you through. Elena held him, feeling the weight of his regret and her own complicated forgiveness. I know, Papa, I know. Dinner was awkward at first, Carlos barely speaking and her mother overly cheerful. But gradually, as they shared food and conversation, the tension eased. Adrian was charming and respectful, winning over Elena's mother with compliments on her cooking, and her father with genuine interest in his construction work. He's not what I expected, her mother said quietly, while the men were clearing dishes. I thought he'd be cold, cruel. But he looks at you like you're his whole world. He is my whole world, Elena admitted. I know it started badly, Mama, but what we have now, it's real. It's love. Then I'm happy for you, baby, even if the path to get here was painful. Later, as they were leaving, Carlos caught Elena's arm. Are you really okay? He asked quietly. Because I need to know you're safe, that you're happy. I'm more than okay, Carlos. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She squeezed his hand. I know it's hard to understand, but Adrian, he's my partner, my choice, and I've never been more certain of anything. The final piece fell into place a few weeks before their first anniversary. Adrian came home early one afternoon to find Elena in the study, surrounded by legal documents. What's all this? He asked, moving to read over her shoulder. The Ramirez Family Foundation. I'm establishing a nonprofit to help families dealing with gambling addiction and debt. She looked up at him. Using my trust fund from the contract as seed money. I want to make sure no one else has to make the choice I made. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, reading the documents. This is remarkable. It's necessary. Your world isn't going away. There will always be people in debt to dangerous men. But maybe we can help some of them find other solutions. Legal solutions. She stood, facing him. I know it won't change what you do, but it might balance some of the scales. You're trying to save people from people like me. I'm trying to save people like me, like my father, like everyone who makes bad choices and gets trapped by them. She took his hands. You can't change what you are, Adrian, but together, maybe we can make some small part of the world better. He pulled her close, his face pressed against her hair. How did I get so lucky? You didn't. You blackmailed an innocent woman into marriage. She smiled against his chest. But then you fell in love with her, and she fell in love with you, and sometimes beautiful things grow from terrible beginnings. Their first anniversary arrived on a cold Saturday in November. Adrian surprised her with a return to the cabin in the Catskills, the place where everything had started to shift between them. I thought we could remember what it felt like to just be us, he explained as they settled in front of the massive fireplace. Before the violence and the politics and all the complications. Elena curled against him, watching the flames dance. I don't know if we were ever just us. From the beginning, it was complicated. True. But we were figuring it out, learning each other. He tilted her face up to his. I want to keep doing that. Learning you, surprising you, making you happy. You do make me happy, even when you're infuriating. Especially when I'm infuriating. He kissed her softly. I have something for you. He handed her a small box, not jewelry, which she'd been half expecting. Inside was a key. What's this? Title deed to this property. It's yours now, completely separate from any of my business holdings. A place that's just ours, untouchable by anyone or anything. He watched her face. I know the contract said 2 years, that you're free to leave when the time is up, but I wanted you to have this regardless. Somewhere safe. Somewhere that's home. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Adrian, I'm not asking you to stay. I'm just saying that if you do, this is ours. And if you don't, it's still yours. Always. He brushed away her tears. You gave up so much for your family. I wanted to give you something back. Something that's just for you. She kissed him through the tears, tasting salt and love, and the strange sweetness of having chosen this life after all the choosing was supposed to be done. I'm staying, she whispered against his lips. Not because of a contract or obligation, because I love you. Because you're my partner and my home and the best terrible decision I ever made. Terrible decision? He laughed, pulling her into his lap. The worst. I should have run screaming. Should have found some other way to save my father. Should have protected my heart better. She framed his face with her hands. But I didn't. And now look at us. Look at us, he echoed. A crime lord and a teacher. A forced marriage that became real. 2 people who should never have worked but somehow do. We're a disaster. The best kind of disaster. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly. Happy anniversary, Elena Moretti. Happy anniversary, husband. They made love in front of the fire, slow and tender, and filled with the knowledge that they'd survived everything thrown at them and come out stronger. Afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Elena thought about the girl who'd signed that contract a year ago. Scared, angry, certain she was ruining her life. That girl had no idea she was actually saving it. 18 months later, Elena stood in front of the criminal council again, this time presenting her foundation's first-year results. They'd helped 43 families negotiate debt settlements, provided counseling services to hundreds more, and established a network of resources throughout the city. You're cutting into our profits, one council member observed dryly. I'm creating goodwill and reducing the kind of desperate situations that lead to police involvement, Elena countered. Your profits might be slightly lower, but your risk is substantially reduced. I'd call that a fair trade. Lucia laughed. She's got you there, Marcus. Besides, it's good for our image. Shows we're not complete monsters. The council approved continued support for the foundation, several members even making personal donations. As the meeting ended, Lucia pulled Elena aside. You've changed things, the older woman said quietly. Not just for Adrian, but for all of us. You've shown that we can be more than just criminals, that we can build something good alongside the necessary evil. She squeezed Elena's hand. Thank you for that. Walking out into the evening air, Adrian took Elena's hand, pride radiating from him. You're changing the world, he said, one family at a time. We're changing it. This wouldn't exist without you. It wouldn't exist without your courage, your vision. He stopped, pulling her close. I was going to wait, but I can't. I need to ask you something. Ask me what? He pulled out a small box, different from the one that had held the cabin key, but similar in size. Inside was a ring, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. The rings we exchanged at our wedding were part of a contract, symbols of a transaction. He took the ring out, holding it carefully. This one is different. This one is a choice. Elena, will you marry me again? Not because of debt or obligation, but because we choose each other? Because we love each other? Elena's breath caught, tears streaming down her face. We're already married. Legally, yes. But I want to marry you again, with your family there and my people and everyone who matters. I want to exchange vows that we actually mean. I want to choose you in front of everyone, the way I've been choosing you every day for the past 2 years. His voice was rough with emotion. Will you let me do that? Will you choose me back? Yes. She was laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, of course, yes. I choose you, Adrian. Every day, for the rest of my life, I choose you. He slipped the ring on her finger beside her wedding band, and Elena looked at the two rings together, one representing obligation, one representing choice, both precious in their own way. Their second wedding was small and perfect, held at the cabin with only their closest people in attendance. Elena's family, finally able to celebrate without the shadow of debt hanging over them. Adrian's trusted inner circle, people who'd become Elena's friends as well. The criminal council members who'd accepted Elena as one of their own, bringing legitimacy and tradition to the ceremony. Carlos walked her down the aisle this time, squeezing her hand as he gave her away. You sure about this? He whispered. More sure than I've ever been about anything. She smiled at Adrian waiting at the makeshift altar, his face transformed with joy. He's my choice, Carlos. My partner. My love. Then I'm happy for you, sis. Really happy. The vows they exchanged were simple but profound, speaking of choice and partnership and love forged in impossible circumstances. When Adrian slipped a new ring on her finger, a match to the emerald he'd given her, Elena felt the weight of it differently than the first time. This wasn't a shackle. This was a promise. I love you, he said, just loud enough for her to hear. Thank you for choosing me. I love you too. Thank you for becoming worth choosing. They kissed as husband and wife for the second time, and this time it felt like beginning rather than ending. Two people who'd started as enemy and captive, becoming partners and equals, and finally, genuinely, completely in love. The party afterward was joyful and loud, filled with laughter and dancing and toasts that ranged from sentimental to scandalous. Elena danced with her father, who cried and apologized again, and she told him honestly that she forgave him, that his terrible choice had led to something beautiful, even if the path had been painful. Late in the evening, she and Adrian slipped away to the deck overlooking the mountains, stealing a quiet moment together. No regrets? He asked, pulling her close. Not a single one. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Well, maybe one. What's that? I regret that we wasted so much time being afraid. We could have had this from the beginning if we'd just been brave enough to see what was possible. We needed the journey, the fear, the fighting, the slowly learning to trust each other. It made this, he gestured between them, worth so much more. When did you get so wise? I married a teacher. Some of it had to rub off eventually. Elena laughed, tilting her face up for a kiss. I love you, Adrian Moretti, my husband, my partner, my choice. I love you too, Elena Moretti, my wife, my queen, my salvation. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly. Thank you for seeing past the monster to the man underneath. Thank you for becoming the man I could see. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped around each other under the stars. Two people who'd defied every odd and expectation to build something real and precious and lasting. The debt that had brought them together was long paid, but the partnership they'd forged, the love they'd discovered, the life they were building, those were gifts beyond price, and they were only just beginning.